Hello and welcome to the Refinery Podcast. In this episode, I'm talking with Justin Adams. Justin is the owner of Adams & Co. Roofing. He is a great man of integrity. I think you'll enjoy our conversation and you'll see how his integrity shines through. Let's get into it. Well, hello and welcome. We're back in the Refinery studio. We're here now with episode number 3 of the Refinery Podcast. I'm in the studio with Justin Adams of Adams & Co. Roofing. Justin, good to see you today.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm very glad that you're here. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy, but I appreciate any time I get to spend in conversation with you.
Yes, sir. I agree.
One of the reasons why is as we've been in several different conversations, one of the things that's very clear to me is that you care very deeply about operating your business with integrity. And I want to talk about that today. I want to dig into that because I think it's something that, so like if I'm doing values exercises with business owners to get clear on, what people say is your core values, I like to say the word vital values.
Right.
As helping people get clear, one of the most frequent values that comes out of that process is integrity. And I certainly work with a lot of people who do operate with integrity, but certainly you're at the upper echelon there. And
thank you.
So I wanted to get into that. But I also, what I'd love to hear is, so you own Adams & Co. Roofing. I know you're into a lot of other stuff, but talk to me about your background. How did you become the owner of Adams & Co.? How did that happen?
How much time you got, buddy?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So kind of went around the world type thing. It's just funny. That's just how God works, right?
Yeah.
So grew up working in construction for my uncle from the time I was, probably shouldn't say this, get my uncle in trouble like 12 and 13 years.
Yeah, right.
I'm sweeping the shop out. That's
Yeah.
probably not advisable now, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I've been around it my whole life. It's in my blood. And I went to Clemson University, was going there for engineering reasons. And
Okay.
what was kind of comical about it is I grew up working for my uncle in Columbia, South Carolina in a welding shop, custom metal. So, it's hotter than the blazes of what in there. You're like, if that doesn't teach you work ethic, I don't know what does.
Sure.
I'm like telling my uncle, man, I can't wait to get to college so I can be a job in the air conditioning. And then I go to the engineering thing and then I end up outside anyway. So it's just kind of funny how things came full circle. But yeah, didn't start in construction. Went to Clemson, got the degree, actually ended up in engineering. And
what kind of engineering?
so industrial engineering.
Okay.
Well, it's just, then again, this is just, the Lord has a funny way of going about things.
Yeah.
So worked construction from the time I was a teenager until college. Went to become a mechanical engineer.
Yes.
Did it for 3 years. Took all the hard classes,
Yes.
like statics and dynamics, all the stuff that you're supposed to have. And then decided I really had lost a love for it. Didn't really want to do it anymore.
Okay.
So I went to the Michelin Career Center on Clemson's campus. And then it pointed me towards either architecture, finance, just because I have a very analytical mind.
Yes.
Or construction science. I was like, well, let me kind of explore these options a little bit more. And then ended up pursuing construction science. So changed majors after being in school for 3 years. My dad paying for my school wasn't necessarily too happy about it.
Right. I bet.
But I always made good grades. So, I didn't have a reason for him not to. So,
Right.
But anyway, finished up with a degree from Clemson University in construction science and management, a minor in business administration, but graduated during the recession.
Okay.
So I ended up getting an engineering job anyway because that's all that was available.
Yeah, right.
Well, found a really great fit. Really loved my job there. It was actually really, really difficult for me to leave 6 years later whenever I decided. But we had got into roofing due to a family connection through my wife's family.
Okay.
It was presented to us, and I prayed about it for a few months, and then felt like that was the direction that the Lord was taking me. And so, man, hung up my white-collar cleats and put on my blue-collar boots and went to work.
Yeah.
It was definitely an adjustment period going from doing industrial engineering in Greenville, South Carolina to roofing in Anderson, South Carolina. So that's a kind of a culture shock type thing going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've been doing that that was about 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And so it's been a journey, definitely been a journey. Learned a lot. Oh my goodness, man. They always say that you'll learn more in the first 6 months to a year in the real world than you will in college. And my goodness, if that isn't the gospel, I don't know what.
Okay, so first 6 months, what was the most shocking thing when you went through the processes, you got into the business? Did you start out did you immediately transition from working for somebody else to fully owning, or did you transition, or you fully went in?
No,
it's
fully
mine.
into it. Yeah, fully into it. It's mine.
All right. What was the most shocking thing the first 6 months?
Oh, man. You know what? I don't even know if I could put my finger on one specific thing, but all of which I had leadership roles in the position that I had before, but it's different.
Right.
When you're not one of the guys, you are the guy.
Yeah.
So literally everything falls on you, whether it's good or bad, right?
Yes.
And so like making sure that the work-life balance, I said probably my hardest thing was I brought work home with me a lot, just because it was so overwhelming, and then all the things that you never really had to think about before, whether that be the logistics, especially in construction, scheduling, payroll, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, right.
You know, that weighing on you every couple weeks and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say the biggest adjustment for sure was the job that I have now is definitely not 8 to 5.
No.
Or 9 to 5.
No.
I mean, we work like dogs, literal dogs sometimes. And
yeah. There's a comparison that I like to make. We've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you work in any job, and people that care at all will have some kind of pride of ownership, meaning my name's attached to this job.
Right.
I want to do a good job. I want people to know that when I take care of my responsibilities and that sort of thing. Right. And not everybody possesses that, but it is a remarkable thing. In other words, you could look at employees and go, they have really a lot of pride in their work. They take ownership. And I think if people would desire anything from employees, that would be if you said, okay, what are the 5 things that anybody that works for you needs? I think if you asked 1,000 people, 999 of them would say ownership as part of that, or at least some description of that.
Right.
So there's pride of ownership, but then there's a whole other thing, which the mantle of ownership, right? And so that's a whole other level. So talk about that a little bit. What is it like to go from the pride of ownership to the mantle of ownership? You talked about it some, but tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. I mean, it's really there's a gentleman that I go to church with who's also he's a generational business owner.
Okay.
And we have this kind of run of the joke, and we'll be like, "Hey, boss man," we'll see each other on Sunday mornings. Like, "How you doing, boss man?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing good, boss man. How you doing?" Just the rhetoric back and forth.
Right.
And then everybody wants to be the boss man until it's time to make a tough decision, until something happens, and then it's your fault, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's your fault or not, right? Wink, wink. But I think the biggest thing is whenever I first transitioned, I had worked in other environments that maybe weren't the most healthy psychologically, right? Or either like very demanding, which I mean, some jobs are just hard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. I mean, some jobs demand perfection from you, but even from a safety perspective, or especially if like you're in finance and you're dealing with somebody else's money, you better be sure you know what you're doing, right? But anyway, yes, exactly.
Yeah, precision.
So, but I knew that I was coming into an industry that was for lack of a better term, corrupt, really.
Okay.
Not specific to like, Anderson or anything. I mean, it's just construction is known for, having distrust.
Okay.
And I mean, I think it was some publication. I can't remember if it was Forbes or Business Insider, but it was like the top 100 most trusted to least trusted professions in the country. First, second, third were like doctors, nurses, etc. I believe construction was like 97th. And behind that was like dentist, believe it or not. Dentist, just because people hate the dentist, right? They just equate that with pain.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I think was a used car salesman or something like that. And lawyers.
Right.
So I got that going for me, right? But anyway, the one thing I told myself whenever I first came into it and being the man, if you want to call it that, was I wanted to create an environment where my guys actually liked coming to work today. They looked forward to coming to work today, guys or girls, right? I wanted to create a place where their children would see how happy they were and actually wanted to grow up to come work with us. Like I want that level of environment.
Yeah.
And guys that, because if they're happy, they're going to work hard, and I'm not going to have to sit there and micromanage them, which that's not really my managerial style anyway. Right. I much rather, I prefer giving whomever the tools for success and allowing them to blossom and grow and actually develop, and then even learning their potential leadership skills or lack thereof, right? I mean, not everybody's cut out to be the boss man, forgive the rhetoric.
Yeah, right,
but
right.
But no, that was one of my biggest goals whenever I first came in, and really trying to understand the demographic of my, I guess, of the workforce.
Okay.
Because, where I had come from, everybody's college degree, just, everybody pretty much all.
They were on that full career pathway.
That's exactly right. Everybody's similarly motivated, et cetera. But then you're changing to a bunch of good old boys.
Yeah.
You got to approach them a little bit differently. You got to be firm, but you got to love on them. Probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a guy that owned another construction company. He was like, man, you're going to learn with some of these guys. You got to be firm with them, but you got to be like the mother hen a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like you got to love on them a little bit, but if you love on them, they'll work hard for you. And man, that was probably one of the most factual statements I'd ever heard in my life. So that's like, I know there's probably a better term for it, but I love providing a atmosphere that my guys enjoy coming to work for.
Sure.
Just because what we do, it's hot in the summer, it's cold in the winter.
Right.
I mean, it's dirty. My goodness. I mean, sometimes your back hurts, sometimes your knee hurts. I mean, it's rough on our bodies.
Yeah.
It's there's always, expect the unexpected when it comes to construction.
Yeah, right.
Definitely, because every single job is going to be different.
No 2 days are
No, that's probably one of my favorite things about it. When I came from an engineering background, engineering has a tendency to be monotonous.
Right.
It's definitely not like that with what I do now. I mean, literally, I've been doing this job 5 years, and not one job has ever even been remotely similar.
Right.
Keep showing your toes, which I kind of like. It forces you to pay attention.
Sure. No, that makes sense. There's a lot of variables, and engineering at its best is problem solving.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So
the whole point of engineering is to make sure nothing bad does happen.
Prevent bad stuff and make life better.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you think about like your team and in the time that you've been the man, has your team changed in makeup in terms of the people that are working with you?
Oh yeah, man, that's a whole conversation topic right there in and of itself. I mean, I just know we've discussed things before about a little bit of the history of our company, but yeah, one of the biggest hiccups is you can find out very quickly who operates in high moral character and who just doesn't care, just shows up for work every day to collect a paycheck, which, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, as long as they perform their work, I mean, some people you're going to get what you get, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't have people that are potentially doing underhanded things, especially, again, in an industry that is known for being not the most trustworthy.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness. Yeah, that was definitely the biggest change. I mean, like I said, we came in from a family connection.
Yeah.
And we had come to find out that 16 of the 18 people that were employed by us were all corrupt in some capacity. So
you got the family dynamics, plus you're essentially cleaning up a mess.
I'm cleaning up a mess. Yeah. I like to refer to it as the inmates were running the asylum.
Yeah.
Because the leadership at the time, there was a family health matter, and they were away just due to cancer treatments and things like that. And then I guess what one would call the on-site supervisor basically started running it like it was their own company and, embezzling. And I mean, it's by the literal grace of God, I'm sitting across from you right in hell. But then again, that's why it's really good to make sure that if you're operating in God's will, that you're really listening to what he's telling you, because I would have left I was a senior level engineer where I was at I wasn't a rich man, but I was making a very, competitive engineering salary in Greenville, South Carolina. And so I literally just changed my life overnight. On I want to call it a hope and a prayer, but that's basically what it was.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, let me ask. I mean, you're clearly a person of faith, and in just our short time of conversation here, that's been come out quite a bit. So, why does that matter for you? Like, what do you think day in and day out, or if you think about this situation, you had to clean up a mess.
Yes. Where
some illegal activity essentially is going on, and now you have your name on the company.
That's exactly right.
So, what did faith matter in all of that? What does it meant?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I mean, it goes down to the basic point of that. I left my job by my faith. My faith is what got me to do that. I mean, and a very blessed man. Not just, I mean, and I don't mean that financially necessarily. I mean, yes, my business is doing very well, but even like at home, you know, and we've just, you know, we've been blessed with children. I mean, just whatever one would define as a blessing.
Right.
And it even started all the way back to whenever I was a young kid. I grew up in a home where granddaddy's a deacon, you know, that kind of thing. And so I've just been in church my whole life, right? So, I mean, literally since I was born, I was indoctrinated into the church.
Right.
So it's my comfort zone, number one. You know,
sure.
That's my basically an extension of my family.
Right.
And I had learned even at a very young age, I was probably 12 at a good old church camp, man.
Yeah.
good old summer church camp.
Yes, so this conversation from this point could go one way or the other.
Oh my goodness, man!
You just said church camp, and right?
Yeah, so, that's a rabbit hole right there, buddy, for sure. But anyway, so I remember specifically, I was 12 years old, and I felt like I was like, you know what? I was old enough to decide then, you know what, God, I'm just going to follow the path that you have for me.
Okay.
And whether that was what college I went to, what woman I married, you know, even down to like, you know, whether we have children or things like that. And so, I mean, God has just guided my step every single way. And life is good.
Yeah.
And I hope, you know, Lord willing, it'll continue to be good.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but to me, it's not only the comfort of it, but I mean, I think just the evidence is in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you seek God's favor, He favors you.
Yeah.
And my life is a direct reflection of that.
So you're very aware that beyond what you can see, the people in front of you, the situations, or all the sort of physical, tangible stuff.
All right, yeah.
There's definitely a spiritual side to everything that's going on.
Absolutely.
And someone else is involved in the process, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, I mean, I could only imagine that pretty much day in and day out, that is influencing your decision making.
It does.
Yeah. So, where did that? Talk to me about like the most important places that matter, and what I'm really asking you is, where do you think there's been times? Because you're talking about kind of favor and blessing. That's one side of faith, right?
It is.
There's another side of faith where, you know, Jesus said, in this life you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world, right? So I actually think that's one of the kindest things that Jesus ever said. It's like, you know, I'm telling you the truth. Like, this is going to be hard.
Oh, yeah.
But take heart, right? So, so where has that mattered the most? Like, what are some situations where, like, you could have, you like maybe where you said to yourself, because I think there's times where I've gone through situations and I'm in the middle of them, and I'm aware that they're difficult. I'm aware that they're hard. I'm aware that I'm sort of persisting, surviving, putting a lot of effort into it. And I'm aware also that, like, what would I do in this situation without my faith? Without the belief that something other than what I see right now is possible, right?
Right.
So one of those moments been for you where you're like, I don't know what I'd do without my faith?
Well, it definitely, one of the main things that I prayed about whenever I first transitioned to this job was wisdom and discernment.
Okay.
Because I had kind of seen the, let's call them the seeds that were planted of, you know, immorality in the company and things like that. Right. And so I was seeing evidence of this, and then little things were popping up here and there. I mean, even catching guys going to Lowe's or Home Depot and buying gift cards and $250, $300 under the company line of credit account, and even the little
they can use it for whatever.
I mean, they were taking their wives out for their anniversary dinner, or they would go to vacation at Myrtle Beach and get a $500 gift card on just silly stuff, just silly stuff.
Right.
But even they would throw a bone to the little cashier girl at the pro desk at Lowe's and buy her one too on the company. So it was like hush money.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there's no telling how, and that's just one example. I mean, that's literally just one example. So in terms of prayer and then faith, I was kind of like, all right, Lord, well, I felt like you were leading me to do this. Well, reveal to me the stuff that's not of, I mean, that's just, you know, the bad juju. Show me the bad stuff, right? Yeah. And so one thing that kind of transpired with us is I didn't even necessarily have to terminate everyone immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll tell you this, there was a good and the bad. So some of the guys that were working for us at the time were incredibly knowledgeable of the industry.
Right.
So I kind of had to be like a sponge because, I was an infant in regards to, being the boss man. And so I'm thinking, okay, so I've got to decipher what are they telling me that's good and what are they telling me that's like, no bueno. Okay?
Yeah, right.
So that was one of my biggest things that I was praying about. I was like, Lord, reveal to me what's the stuff that I actually need to be paying attention to.
Sure.
And if they tell me something, give me that little, bug in my ear that says, oh,
the hair on the back of your neck stands up a little
I don't know about that one, right?
Yeah.
But thankfully, I'm pretty intelligent enough to be able to decipher just because I'm like, okay, well, that's probably, borderline, on the side of ethics, right?
You had to develop a good BS
right,
sniffer,
yes, that's right. I basically had to become a licensed attorney. And that's the thing about being a construction owner. If it's like minor tangent here, but I've discussed this with other guys that own construction companies, and we have to be not only licensed constructors, but engineers, lawyers. There's just accountants. There's so many different levels to what we do, which like I said, I won't be tangential. But anyway, going back to that, one of the things whenever I was praying about specifically for wisdom in that transitional period, I was like, okay, so I've got to figure out. I knew there were multiple things going wrong, but it was one of those things where you can't just fire everybody because then you have no workforce to actually perform the work. So then my livelihood is completely gone. And I don't know anyone in the industry. So who am I going to do to get actually okay. And not to mention the financial differences. On a hope and a prayer. It had gotten so bad financially to the point that I was literally operating my business with at the end of the week after payroll, I would have less than $1,000 left in the checking account.
Yeah.
I operated between $800 and $1,000 by 5 o'clock every Friday.
Right.
That's kind of scary.
Yes, it is.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Thank goodness my wife has a professional career of her own in the medical field and kind of carried the team for a couple of years. Yeah. We also didn't have children or anything. So, and my mindset at the time was, we don't have any children that we have to be responsible for or anything like that. Like financially, we're not going to get any more set than we are right now.
Yeah.
So if the stars were going to align for me to make a career change, now would be the time.
You got to do it.
And thank God I did it because, oh my goodness, if I would have had to have gone through what we went through in terms of, because it was, very little cash flow like that. Mm-hmm. It was like that for like 18 months.
Yeah.
It felt like survival mode almost 24/7.
Yeah, no, I get it.
No vacation, like budgeting for groceries, and which, that was no problem because I was a poor college kid, right? Ramen noodles taste pretty good when you put an egg in there, when you eat them with chopsticks, right? Yeah. So anyway, I had learned to live very responsibly financially whenever I was in college. Plus, my mother's a banker, so it's literally indoctrinated into my DNA. I don't even have to overthink it, right?
Right.
Which is probably why the Michelin Career Center told me I should get into a career in finance, but, whatever. Anyway, so going back to things, though, faith is not only, in my prayer life, has not only led me to, whenever I was making the transition with my company, but, God's hands have just been puppeteering things for me my whole life.
Okay.
Even the woman that I married, it was kind of comical. As she was just a little country girl, and I'm not. I'm a city boy through and through, straight up from Columbia, South Carolina, right? And then I could come and meet with my wife. She's like, "Hey, y'all," I'm not like that. Yeah, right. And so anyway, we came together, and then fast forward a handful of years later, then I actually had the family connection through the construction business through her. Yeah. And so not only have we been blessed, but we have been able to bless others, and especially the guys that work with me now. One of the things that I always said was, okay, like especially for the guys in our field, they're not necessarily the most well-educated. These guys work around, the backbone of America, right?
Sure, right.
Like these dudes are the battered knuckles of what has built the United States of America.
Yeah, right.
And so I'm like, these are the guys that really need to be taken care of because they're the dudes that keep the train rolling. Whenever it's plowing through the snow or through the rain or the muck, those dudes are the ones breaking their backs to make things happen. So I told myself, well, I'm not going to go install the roof. Yeah, I'm the guy that was smart enough to pass the general contractor's exam, and I know how to do it, but you know what, man? I had never done it before. I told myself, okay, well, I've got to find the guys that have been doing it for a while, and then I've got to hold on to those dudes, and I've got to spoil them to the point that they love coming to work. Yeah. And Thank goodness it's working out okay. So
yeah. So you really followed from the beginning, like the idea of the E-Myth. You weren't going to go be the technician out there.
No.
You were going to be the CEO of the company.
Nor will I ever proclaim to do that.
So you from day one, you've been in business building mode.
Correct. That's exactly right. More of an entrepreneurial mindset than actually like going and getting my. Which, don't get me wrong, I've gotten my hands dirty too. I'll go out and pick up trash on job sites and stuff whenever we have to.
Right.
But no, I knew that in order for our business to be successful, the best thing I could do was actually like get out of the way.
Yeah.
Watch these guys, learn from these guys that have been doing it 20, 25, 30 years. I mean, my goodness. I mean, I've got some of these guys have been doing it longer than I've been alive.
Yeah. So let's talk about it this way. What are the tangible ways in which those guys have benefited by you getting out of the way and being in the entrepreneurial CEO business building mode?
Especially my managerial style, which I mean, those guys, if we're being honest, they're old enough to be my dad.
Right.
Okay. Now all of a sudden I'm their boss.
Right.
So, I mean, there was an adjustment period for sure, and it was definitely not for everybody. I mean, I had one guy in particular that was working for us, which things just worked out the way they were going to.
Right.
Regardless, right? But
yeah, he wasn't going to last.
No,
if you were on the roof, it wasn't going to make a difference.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and he was actually in an outside sales position, but he didn't have enough drive or tenacity, in my opinion, for a really strong work ethic. He just kind of did what came to him. So our personalities just didn't jive.
Right.
So anyway, he ended up kind of working himself out the door, which is nice. I mean, if you kind of fire themselves, that saves me the trouble, right?
Yep.
So anyway, though, and it allowed me to see who was going to have the most drive, and they really enjoyed the fact that I didn't authoritatively micromanage them.
Right. Yeah.
They had come from previous managerial styles where it was like those dudes were breathing it down their neck 24/7. And so I was like, all right, man, well, you know what you're doing. I'm not going to babysit you.
Right.
I mean, if you've got a 13-year-old at home, you've taught them how to cut the grass or whatever. I mean, are you literally going to walk behind them every step of the way and be like, hey, buddy, you missed a dandelion right there. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, you're not going to do that. You're going to teach them, and then you're going to mold them, and you're going to let them go off and learn. Well, that's what I did. I just gave them an opportunity for success. I was like, if you need tools, you come to me.
Yeah.
If within reason, right? Don't come tell me about some $15,000 thing or something crazy.
Yeah,
but like, if you need something, come to me. If something breaks, come to me. Don't. A lot of those guys, especially in construction, the boss men, if you will, I'm doing air quotes with my fingers there, but the boss men of years past, very, like I said, very authoritative, very almost dictator-like.
Right.
And so a lot of these guys are almost kind of apprehensive. Like they're very hesitant if they need something or if they want to come to whomever, owner, CEO, etc.
Yeah.
They usually don't want to ask for help.
You're right.
And so whenever I came to them, I was like, well, if you need help, just tell me.
Yeah.
And I was very just nonchalant about, like, look, man, if you need some help, tell me, I'll help you.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I can't do your job.
Yeah.
But I will give you everything you need to be able to perform it. And plus, I knew too that if I gave these guys the proper tools, I was also kind of trying to look at a way of helping them prolong their quality of life.
Yeah.
So that way, well, for number one, if I help prolong their quality of life, they'll work for me longer.
Sure.
Which will also transition into more financially beneficial for them, but for me too. And another thing, these guys, they usually don't have a lot of sense in terms of I'm not saying investing, but I offer health insurance to my guys. None of them had ever worked anywhere before where the owner of the construction company was like, look, man, I'll pay for your health insurance. Yeah. And I don't even take it out of their checks. I do that out of the kindness of my heart. I pay for theirs. So I give them comfortability.
Right. So in the immediate sense, they're benefiting from your leadership style, but from a financial standpoint, in a pretty short order, you actually increase that financial status by taking away the expense of health insurance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about the team that's been with you the longest, beyond those benefits, has their life advanced financially in the time that they've been working with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys that were before me, I mean, they didn't even have life insurance or anything.
Sure.
So I didn't I don't pay for their life insurance, but I help guide my guys in the best way that I know how for them to have opportunities for success.
Sure.
With whatever endeavor that may be.
Yeah.
And in construction, retention of employment can be difficult at times, just because of how demanding our job can be.
Right.
And sometimes if the boss is really hard on his guys, they don't want to stick around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of going back to what I said a few minutes ago, I wanted to create an environment where the guys actually wanted to come to work every day.
Right.
And it's working out really well. My guys, every guy I've had, I mean, they've all been with me for years.
Right.
And I'm only in the 5th year of doing this.
Right.
So once I got my staff to where I wanted it, and I had individual conversations with my guys, and I was like, okay, man, whenever I was getting to know them, like, you tell me, what's your favorite thing to do?
Yeah.
In terms of like your skill, okay? Do you prefer to do this particular portion of the trade, that particular portion of the trade? And then I even identified the different areas that would help those guys be more successful at whatever they were performing.
Yeah.
Because
so
I also knew,
yes,
right, exactly. But I also knew from a cost-effective standpoint that as long as I point these guys, well, let them do the thing that they really like to do because they're going to be good at it.
Right.
Number one, which is also not even trying to be like financially motivated, but is going to be more financially efficient and beneficial for me as the business owner.
Yeah, I get
because, that's just one less thing that you have to worry about. Mitigating the stress of being the boss man. That is definitely the biggest hurdle. And I would say the biggest adjustment for me was learning delegation, having a very engineering-based, analytical mind.
Right.
Like, I'm also kind of OCD, so like I don't want to say perfectionist. I'm not that extreme, but like I like when things work well.
Yeah,
I like when things work efficiently.
Yeah, and you're holding all the parts of the process in your mind.
That's exactly right.
If you're not executing on every single part, you're hanging on to it.
Right. No.
In your mind, right?
So I wanted to make sure that those guys were comfortable to the point that they would perform their jobs, perform it well, and then it would actually give me comfortability because I wasn't having to stress about whether they were doing their job well or not.
Sure. Okay, so let me ask you this. So at the beginning of this conversation, I talked about integrity. I've got a few questions about that for you specifically. Now, I think everything you've been sharing here has really been about the integrous way in which you've approached your company and operated your business. But just first and foremost, for you, like, define integrity. What does that mean for you by definition? Like, how would you explain that?
Yeah, man. What do you do when nobody's watching?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
good. Okay, so here's my next question. Has integrity cost you anything?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So how is it, what do you think is a price you've paid for keeping integrity?
Millions.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really. I know, and I'm not trying to say that boastfully or anything, but just. My job can be very, very lucrative. Yeah. And if you're willing to do things that toe the ethical line,
right,
man, you can make a lot of money. I mean, I'm not going to name names and be specific or anything, but I have some competitors here, just even in the upstate, that are deca-millionaires. Yeah. Because they don't always operate with a high moral compass.
Yeah. And they're not operating out of the same playbook.
No, they're not. Yeah. But, myself, if I did that, I would lose sleep at night, and I'd rather get a full 8 hours of sleep and then, just
you got to live with yourself.
Absolutely.
So the millions of dollars would have been meaningless to you with that kind of way of.
Oh man, dirty money is dirty money.
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day,
I think there's a few scriptures about
there.
that.
Yeah, I was gonna say there might be one or two.
Yeah.
There might be one or two.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's cost you. What else? Any other ways in which?
Well, another thing too, especially as it regards to faith and bearing fruit and things like that. I'm in an industry where, guys are not exactly, everybody's not a Christian, right?
Sure.
And especially not, in the actual skilled labor part, dudes usually cuss like sailors and whatever else, right? So anyway, I told myself that, the Bible calls for us to bear fruit. So I wasn't sitting there, like a crazy evangelist, like prophesying on the street corner or anything like that. But I just... the way I live my life outside of work, I live it at work. And so I'm just an example to the guys. And I don't push faith on them or anything like that, but I just operate my business as if I operate my business with the knowledge of I'm going to be held to a higher standard one day. And and the Lord blessed me with this platform. And so if I'm not seeking God's favor with something that He has led me to this point, then what am I even doing it for? Yeah. Nice. And another thing, in terms of the financial, if you're trying to seek God's favor, you can't seek God's favor with dirty money. Yeah. If the Lord's blessing you, He's not going to bless. He's going to bless you, and it doesn't even necessarily mean financially. So I guess let me make that clear too. The dollar amount at the end of the day. Yeah, don't get me wrong, man. It's great sometimes, but I mean, I was a blessed man whenever I was eating ramen noodles.
Sure. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're talking about is, it's kind of like, what's the new Star Wars thing where the guy's always going, "This is the way."
This is the way, Mandalorian.
This is the way. Yeah,
I love the Mandalorian. Yeah,
so,
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you in your mind, in your spirit,
Mm-hmm.
there's a pathway that you're following. Like you're trying to stay in harmony
Right.
with some way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And with the belief that it's not your way, it's God's way, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So, there was something else you said, which I think is an interesting part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You said that, the way you are at home is the way you are at work. So in other words, there's no, you're not pretending
Mm-mm.
when you're one place or the other.
No.
If you think about the word, integrity, it has to do also with this idea of like wholeness.
Right.
And it's almost like things running in a circuit. And if they don't match up, then they're not aligned, right? So there's no circulation, there's no flow. Like with electricity, if you've got, along the way, this circuit is out,
right.
It doesn't keep the electricity flowing. Integrity has to do with that. It's like it keeps a flow of what
Absolutely.
you want to go, right? Okay, so what about? Let me ask you this. So you mentioned that there are people who do things in ways that you wouldn't consider them to be in integrity, and they can get a result. They can make a lot of money.
Yes.
Let's talk about the bidding process. Where do you, in the bidding process for you, when you're out bidding on jobs and it's a competitive process,
right?
Where does that come in? Where does integrity matter in that process for you?
Man, this is another rabbit hole in and of itself. I mean, I could sit here for like 6 hours if we really tried. Our voices would be hoarse by that point.
Yeah.
But in terms of bidding, also, man, that's another one of those areas where stuff can just get really touchy. I mean, especially on the bigger stuff. I mean, there was one that I was looking at this summer. Another company came in and they were literally about 50% of what my pricing was.
Right.
And here I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, how in the heck? Like, there's absolutely no way. But this is just a prime example. So I bid it to where I knew that I needed to be financially for my guys to get compensated for the extreme amount of work that was going to take place. I pay my guys. I pay them handsomely. Like I pay myself less money because I know I have good guys, and so I reward them to the point that I don't want them to ever even think about leaving me for somebody else or with another company, which I love on them. I love on them like half of them are older than me, but I love on them like they're my sons, right?
Right.
So anyway, then in terms of the bidding process, you could see a lot of different things where companies will low bid on purpose, and then they'll submit change orders after the fact. Yes, exactly right. Or they low bid it knowing that they're only going to provide, the snake oil.
Right.
They'll tell them what they want to hear in the bidding process, get them to sign, and then that job that I was just mentioning, I literally got a call last Wednesday from a member from the HOA committee asking me specific questions that were discussed during the bidding process because that other company isn't doing what they said they were supposed to do. And the only reason I even answered the phone call was because I've known the woman, which it's not her fault. I didn't do the job right. I mean, she's been good to me for years, but she is because she's a repeat customer of mine. And so whenever I saw she was calling, I thought she was calling about something else. I had no idea, but she actually resides in where she's on the HOA, right? So she told me, she was like, well, this other crew, they're doing blah, 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 blah. And she was like, I know you probably don't care. And I said, well, listen, with regards to your community, no, ma'am, I don't care. But with regards to you, I do. So I'm going to help you because of you.
Right.
And she was like, well, thank you very much for that. So she was, and I'm not going to get into it because it's irrelevant to our conversation here. But it's just the point of stuff like that happens all the time.
It's predictable.
It is predictable. Yeah. But then people... I think transparency with pricing is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people And now where my business is at, for whomever that's listening, Anderson, South Carolina is definitely a more blue collar community.
Sure.
So money's of a pretty significant importance.
So their expectation about what something is going to cost is probably lower than if you went 50 miles one way.
Correct. Absolutely.
They would expect the price to be.
So, it's really, man, it's really hard to convince somebody to give you a lot of money. And construction's really expensive. I mean, most of those people, the only other time they've spent that much money is when they bought their house or business in the very beginning.
Yeah, people are making big decisions for
they are.
business or life
Absolutely.
or whatever. Right?
Absolutely. And I mean, and half the time they're going to get financial approval from the bank, whether it be like a refinance or something. So these are extreme cost expenditures that are related. So trying to develop trust in these customers, but a lot of customers, I don't want to say a lot, but for every handful, they just want the pricing to be the most efficient that it possibly can. I don't want to say lowest, because at the end of the day, not everybody, they don't want cheap stuff. They just want bang for their buck.
Right.
So with whomever customer you're talking with, residential, commercial, industrial, doesn't matter, the same principle applies. They want to make sure that they're getting a value for their dollar. Mm-hmm. And so my biggest job is letting them know the value of their dollar, which translates into transparency in my pricing, being just, you can never go wrong with telling someone the truth.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't, that's in everything.
Sure.
That's biblical, right? None of us like biblical. That's what we tell our kids.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just the way life should be. Mm-hmm. And people don't always act like that.
Yeah.
And not to mention the financial problems that you can potentially come from. I mean, I really don't take comfort in the thought of someone suing my pants off if I get it right. Right. Yeah. So anyway, like there's a whole lot of different tangents that you could go off with regards to that topic. But yes, the bidding process, you're not going to get all of them.
Right.
That's the thing that you have to realize with what we do. You can never compromise your integrity. You can never compromise who you are. You can never be like, okay, well, don't let a customer be like, hey, man, do this one thing for me. Because you know what? I try to operate in the mindset of, I don't care. Then again, going back to my definition of integrity, what do you do when no one's looking? Mm-hmm. Well, that has to apply at all times. Yeah. And just because this one homeowner, business owner, whatever is needing me to do something, or, I'm not going to falsify information on a document or anything like that to try to manipulate whatever bank or insurance company and I just straight up honestly tell people respectfully, I will respectfully decline business if I have a small little thought that whomever I'm potentially doing business with might have, other things in mind.
Yeah.
And I don't sit there and scream from the rooftops or anything. I just say, if this is your idea that you have, respectfully, I don't think I'm the contractor for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And that has actually led into me and that has actually led to those customers calling us back.
Well,
because they're like,
you're starting into my next question. Mm-hmm. So where is integrity paying off for you? Like in terms of jobs, let's just talk about from a customer standpoint.
Well, in terms of, one thing that you and I discuss pretty often is networking and referral based, repeat business and things like that. Like, if you operate with a high moral compass and being just operating with the utmost integrity for whether it's someone that you worked with before or a complete stranger. Yeah. In terms of like growing your business healthily and sustainably, that is incredibly important in my opinion.
Sure.
Because even if they call you and you can't help them.
Right.
I mean, I don't care if it's a $5 job or a $5 million job.
Yeah.
Like, look, man, if you can't help them, just tell them you can't help them.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with respectfully declining. Yeah, that's exactly right. Or, I mean, what I actually try to do is I've developed friendships with other guys that are in similar related fields. And I'll just be like, listen, I don't think that's something that I want to take on. Thank you. I mean, I don't care if it's a $100,000 job, man. What happens if you screw it up?
Right.
Not only are you potentially putting yourself in the hole, you're burning a bridge with whomever customer.
Yeah.
And then people are going to remember when you do them wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just human nature. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, you could do 100 things right, but the 99th time you might do something wrong and they're going to remember the 99th.
Sure.
Yeah. So I try to operate my business with the sense of, in any decision I make, what happens if 10 years from now? I plan to do this for a long time, right? I'm only 35 years old, so I still got a lot of years to work.
Yeah, right. You got time.
Yeah. So I'm thinking to myself, I want to operate in a way that these customers are going to call me 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Their kids are going to call me. Their coworkers are going to call me, whatever.
Yeah.
So, the disregard the dollar amount. But if you want to talk about in terms of building a sustainable business model that's going to last for a lifetime, truthfully, that's the way you do it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the money will come. I mean, don't get me wrong, man. I mean, it's not fun having to worry about where your next paycheck's going to come from.
Right.
But if you always do the right thing will happen to you.
So where do you think you've benefited from a referral that you think was tied to just it's the way I do business and contributed to me getting referred?
I have had some, and they are the longer I stay in business, the more prevalent they are becoming.
Yeah.
Which that's just from. It just takes a while to plant those seeds. I mean, not everybody's gonna, especially when some competitors have been in business 20 years and that kind of thing. Yeah. And it's especially in a smaller community where I live. My wife is from the community. So, I came to Clemson University, and I'm not from here. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina originally. Came up here, went to school, started playing drums at the church. That was my wife's home church because they needed a drummer. Their other drummer was leaving. And became friends with my wife, and then married a local girl and stayed here in the upstate. So in a smaller town, they're usually very loyalistic to whomever is from their town.
Right.
So building rapport in a small town, it just takes time to mature.
Yeah.
I mean, and good things don't always happen overnight.
Right.
It takes a tree a long time before it's, from a little shrub to being a full tree, right?
Sure.
So that's kind of the mindset that I have. Like, I know I've mentioned it before, but, operating more like diesel fuel and not kerosene.
Right.
I don't want to be a flash in the pan. I want that slow burn that's just going to have a really linear progression. Well, that's just how my mind works too. I just prefer things to kind of marinate over time, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to make a brisket. I don't know if you're into barbecuing or anything, but that is a labor of love.
Yeah.
24, 48, 72 hours, depending on if you brine it and everything else. And so that's kind of the way that I really like to, I take comfort in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sleep well at night operating my business that way. And my guys, even the ones that aren't Christians, enjoy coming to work every day because of operating a business in that capacity.
Okay. All right. So talk a little bit about Adams and Co. What all do you do? What kind of work are you guys doing?
Whenever I first got into this, we were almost exclusively residential roofing.
Okay.
And then we had a generational tornado come through a neighboring town. It was like the biggest tornado in like 50 years or something crazy. And so we had several customers that were like, well, can you do this or do this or do this? And, whether with regards to it be commercial or residential, didn't matter. And we're like, no, we can't do that at the time. But man, I probably lost millions of dollars in potential revenue just that year alone. Now, obviously, that was an extreme act of God. Stuff like that doesn't happen all the time, right? But that really opened my eyes, and I was like, man, well, I had customers saying, you're like the 7th or 8th person we've called that can't help us with this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't say. But in the state of South Carolina, just for legal reasons in terms of licensing, and then you have to establish a net worth and an audited financial statements and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to bore you with all the whatever stuff, but it takes years to build that up.
Right.
And so really just as of this past summer, that was 3 years ago. And so I started on this journey of performing more general construction type work.
Right.
So as of now, we do roofing and remodeling, whether that be residential, commercial, industrial, all of the above. Not into new construction yet, but I don't know if I really want to pursue that. I kind of like go into, especially old houses. Old houses are a lot of fun, or old businesses.
Yeah,
we did a complete remodel for a law office that I think it was built in like 1914 or something like that. So I mean, it's just I love taking something old and making it new again.
Sure.
Yeah.
So from a residential standpoint, is there a kind of roofing that you don't do?
No, I've built a really good team, and that was another thing that it also took me time, not just for legal reasons to get the licensing and everything right, but in order to, I told myself, okay, well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of OCD. I like my things to be neat and particular and clean. Like I wash my truck almost weekly and stuff like that, right? So I apply that principle to my business, and I'm like, well, if I don't want to find some fly-by-night guys to come in and work for me, I want to find guys that I know are going to be the right fit. culturally, for lack of a better term, really like the guys that are going to mesh with me well. Like, I didn't want to chase the money. I was chasing the security of work more than anything.
Yeah.
Because I know that the money may come. It might take it 5, 10, 15, 20 years before the company starts to make any real money.
Mm-hmm.
But if I bring whomever in gradually, like skilled labor guys to come work for me, as I find those guys, holding on to them, and it just took me those few years to get to the point, but I finally have the labor force to be able to perform all that work to the standard that I have. I have a standard in my head. You see nightmares all the time, about how stuff is just thrown together and, people just don't care. And I tell my guys, I don't care how long you take. I just want it to be perfect when you're done. But,
and for clarification, by the way, would it be safe for me to say that you say I have a standard in my head, a industry spec of a standard is not the same as the standard in your head, right?
Negative.
In other words, you could meet the industry standard and still do pretty terrible work.
Oh
right?
yeah,
okay.
I mean you can pass inspection pretty easily, believe it or not. But I mean by like a local building inspector for to mention they make sure the context is provided for the video here. But but to me, if I want something I expect the quality of something on my own home. Or on my own vehicle.
Yeah.
And that's what I want my guys to give to other customers.
Sure.
Yeah. Like I said, and I'll tell people straight up, which I mean, it might be a bad business model, but it takes a lot of work and I have to invest time and resources in order to put quotes together and things like that. So I have no problem. I love meeting people. I love talking. My friends jokingly call me the mayor because I don't meet a stranger. And they're like, they're like Justin Adams 2030, right? Or whatever. But so I enjoy the fellowship about what I do. That was actually another reason why I left engineering. I didn't want to be stuck in a cubicle in a GE plant or a Michelin plant somewhere for the next 30 years. I mean, man, you make great money, but who cares if you're staring at the same 6-foot wall barrier for 30 years in a row? People, right? That's exactly right. Yeah. I love going and meeting new people. And so I always go out and I love to shake hands, kiss babies, that kind of thing. Go out and politic, if you want to call it that.
Maybe it's in your future.
I think it might be. You never know. We'll see what happens. But go out, meet people, discuss whether I'm the right fit for them. More often than not, I'll tell somebody, kind of like I'll ask them, what kind of budget are you thinking? Like, what are your goals? What like when you close your eyes, what do you see? What do you visualize? What's the end product you're looking for?
Right.
And I just tell them, okay, well, is that $30,000 or is that $130,000? And I'll tell them, so listen, I'll be completely honest. If you call around, you will find people that are cheaper than me. But you know what? 5 years from now, my kids are still going to be going to the same schools.
Yeah.
I'm still going to answer my phone. It's like whenever I'm done, you will never know I was even here other than the vision that you had will be in front of you.
Yeah.
And it might cost you a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, it'll be perfect and it'll last the rest a lifetime.
Yeah.
By the time I'm done.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, and people, I can't tell you how many customers have been like, well, thank you for just being transparent, being honest with me.
Yeah.
I had one young lady in particular. I say young lady, she's like my age, but I had one lady. She has a dream of owning a child care center, like child care services, daycare center. She found this, it was a really nice spot. I thought, it would work perfectly for her. And I was even telling her, I was like, look, as a parent, I have 2 children. I said, as a parent, the vision that you have, I would bring my own children here. Yeah, it was like an hour from my house, but still, I was just telling her that to let her know that, like, yes, like my wife and I are very particular about our children, but like, I think I love the vision that you have.
Sure.
But her budget was literally about 30% of what it really needed to be. Yeah. And she said I was the first contractor she spoke with that just wasn't blowing smoke.
Right.
And she was like, thank you because we were walking around and I was like, ma'am, I'm just telling you to do it the way that you're going to have to for DSS and everything else. And like and for local municipalities with building codes.
Sure.
I said, this is the standard that we are going to have to build for fire safety reasons and poor thing. I think I kind of broke her heart a little bit.
Right.
But I was like, well, this just gives you a goal to work towards financially. That way you know where you need to be.
Yeah.
And I said, don't let go of your dream. I'm just telling you that for you to do in this particular location, I think you just need to keep shopping for maybe something that's a little bit more ready-made.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't always work out in your favor.
No,
but I mean, those are the types of customers that'll call me back 3 years from now or whenever, and be like, hey, Justin, I'm so and so. You remember me from? Thank goodness I have a pretty good memory. So I'm like, oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah. And so that's kind of the thing I was talking about too, in terms of like, just operating with integrity. It just it blossoms.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I have 2 more questions for you.
All right.
You're 35.
Yes, sir.
Knowing what you know now from the last decade, from your life, 25 to 35, what would your 35-year-old self tell your 25-year-old self?
Oh my gosh, man. I was always a good kid. I guess when we constitute, I always made good grades, never got in trouble.
Sure.
Really, other than maybe like accidentally scratching my dad's car or something, right? Like the simple stuff.
Right. But plenty of drive.
Yeah. So I've always been, even in athletics when I was younger, I always wanted to be the fastest on my team. Or, and I was always one of the smaller guys, but I always told myself, okay, well, I know what I'm good at, so I'm going to really excel in what I'm good at. Yeah. Which is the same principle I apply to my business. Okay, well, I know I'm good at the business part, I'm good at the financial part, but you know what, man, I'm not going to go actually take a hammer and nail and build somebody a house, okay? Right. I'm going to use my skills to find the guys that are going to do it for me. Right. So I'm at 25 to 35. Oh my goodness, man. I feel like I have learned a lifetime of wisdom in that amount of time. Yeah. 25-year-old Justin, I don't want to say he was an idiot, but I've matured as a man and things like that. And my wife would probably agree with that too. So I don't think she wants to. I don't think she. So
what do you think the advice you would give if you could go back and you got like 30 seconds to tell 25-year-old Justin something? What would be the message you'd give?
Slow down and pay attention to details.
Okay.
Just slow down a little bit.
All right. So now, what do you think 55-year-old Justin would say to 35-year-old Justin?
Hopefully 55-year-old Justin's living on a boat somewhere. Yeah. So that's the dream, right? Yeah, right. Build this thing so big that somebody wants to come buy it and retire at like 50 and then live off the residual the rest of my life. But truthfully, 55-year-old Justin, I want to be able to look back and see, again, what I said. I want to build something here with my business that even the guys that are with me now, that their kids want to grow up and work for us. Sure. And that they enjoy coming to work every day. And not even, and there again, I don't want it to sound like I'm exclusively financially motivated. I know I've brought that up a lot, but people deserve to have success. Yeah. And a lot of them, especially with what I do, they don't always come from the best backgrounds. Sometimes, maybe dad was an abusive alcoholic or whatever. So
they may not have seen that modeled what you're looking for.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly right. So giving these guys and or girls the platform to be able to see what success feels like. Sure. Yeah. And I mean, some people that's financially, some people that's just maybe they have goals in their head. But maybe they just have something they want to achieve. That may not be fiscally, but just whatever, fill in the blank. Yeah. And then that goes back to my faith again too. And it's like, okay, well, I feel like the Lord blessed me with this platform for a reason. Right. When I put my head down on my pillow at night, I want to know that I'm taking comfort and that I'm being about the Father's business. Yeah. Because that's not just going to bless me, it's going to bless those around me too.
Sure. Yeah. So your message would be about the people.
For sure.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming and spending some time with me in the studio. Sir. This has been absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't talk your head off too much.
No, we may be doing this again sometime, but
yes, sir.
I
look forward
appreciate
to
you.
it.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.